Hey guys, it's Carrie from Lovely Etc. and today I want to show you how to make your own custom stencil in any design you want without using a Cricut or Silhouette or any other kind of fancy equipment. Those are great when you're going to be doing lots of cutting projects, but obviously lots of people don't have them. And luckily it's really easy to make a stencil without one. I love using stencils for DIY projects because they make it really easy to get perfect results, whether you're stenciling a sign or stenciling your tile or even stenciling a wall to look like wallpaper. If you have a DIY project in mind that you are only going to make one single time, so you're only going to use your stencil one time, you're better off not using a stencil at all and just doing a simple transfer. If you don't know how to do a pencil transfer, I'll link up a post I have on my website that explains it. It's super easy. All you need is a pencil and it's going to save you a lot of time. Stencils, on the other hand, are perfect for if you are planning to use the same design multiple times. So for multiple signs or projects, or in the case of a stencil like the one I'm making, you're using one stencil for a repeated pattern. Okay, so you only need a few basic supplies to make a stencil. You need whatever design it is that you're going to use. You can just print it out on your computer, you can draw it, you can make a stencil from a photo or from a picture from a magazine. Basically anything will work. You also need material for your actual stencil. It's probably hard to see because it's perfectly clear, but this is a piece of clear plastic. It's mylar plastic, which is what's typically used for reusable stencils. You can get this on Amazon or at a craft supply store. It comes in different thicknesses, different sizes. This is a 12 by 12, which is the most common size. You might be wondering why we need to buy plastic for a stencil. Why can't you just use some cardstock or some cardboard that you already have at home? And you can use one of those if you want to be really frugal and use what you already have. I'm all about that, so I totally get it. But the problem is that you are not going to have as clean of stencil lines using cardboard or paper as you will with plastic. Plastic just lays better against the surface that you're stenciling, and so it makes it a lot easier to get clean stencil lines. You also need some sort of a craft knife or X-Acto knife and a cutting mat. If you don't have these things, I highly recommend getting them if you ever do any types of crafts or DIY, because I use them all the time and they're really affordable. And finally, it helps to have just a couple pieces of tape. Painter's tape is great, but if you don't have that, it's fine, to hold your design in place. And you might want to have a marker to help trace your design. And we're ready to get started. All right, I'm going to be using this pattern tile design for my stencil. So I am going to place it underneath my stencil blank. And I want to tape it in place so that it doesn't move around while I'm cutting my stencil. So I am going to tape it to the back of my plastic. I'm just using painter's tape because it's easy to remove. And then for this final side, I'm just going to tape it right onto the mat. So you have two choices. You can either trace your design with a marker first and then cut out the design once it's traced onto your plastic, or you can just pull out your X-Acto knife and start cutting. Using a marker first is probably the safer choice because you don't have to worry about the plastic moving around as you're cutting, but either way can work, although I highly recommend using a marker first if you're cutting out a fairly intricate design. When you're ready to cut, just trace along the lines of your design very carefully and slowly with your craft knife. You might have to go along some areas twice to cut all the way through the plastic. Just make sure to follow the same line exactly. And anywhere you're cutting a straight line, it really helps to use a ruler. Before you start, make sure your cutting blade is nice and sharp so that it can cut through the plastic smoothly and you'll get nice clean lines for your stencil. Once it's all cut out, you're ready to pull off the tape and remove your stencil to see how it all turned out. So here's my finished stencil. Once you pull everything off, if you find some parts that aren't perfectly smooth or exactly right, you can always go back with your craft knife and clean those parts up. And now I'm ready to try my stencil out. Stenciling is pretty simple, but there are some tricks that will really help you to get nice, clean, perfect stencil lines, and I have a whole nother video that talks about the best materials to use, how to make sure that you get perfect results so you're not disappointed with your final project, and I'll link that up above in case you need a little bit of help with your stenciling technique. And one more tip, if you're making a stencil with a repeated pattern like mine, you'll notice that on my stencil I cut a few extra parts of the pattern next to my main stencils. That makes it easy to line things up as you're stenciling and keep your pattern nice and straight. All in all, I'm really happy with how this DIY stencil turned out. As I said, I love using stencils for DIYs, and I'm a big fan of being able to customize any project I'm making to exactly how I envisioned it in my head. So being able to make my own stencils is definitely a game changer. If you haven't, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel, Lovely Etc., where I share lots of inexpensive DIY ideas for creating a home that you love.